Let's talk about water, okay? And whether we are actually doing enough to make sure that we have water, sufficient water for our people, for all the users of water. We are joined by two guests in the studio. The first one is His Excellency Professor Hilary Barchok, PhD, EGH, Governor of Bomet County, and he's also the chair of the water pillar at the Lake Region Economic Bloc. And the second one is Waziri Peninah Mukabane. She is a County Executive Committee member for Water, Environment, Climate Change, Natural Resources, Mukombero, and the others in Kakamega County. Welcome, Governor. Welcome, Waziri.
Thank you
so much.
Karibuni sana to the hot seat of the situation.
Yeah.
It's been a long time coming, Governor.
Yes.
Yes, Bwana, but here you are.
Yes.
Waziri as well. We have talked many times about the environment, about the only tropical rainforests in this country, which is in your county. How is it, by the way?
Yeah, it's doing well. First of all, receive greetings from my governor, Honorable Fernandez Odinga Baraza. He's doing fine, and he gave me the blessings to come here. The tropical rainforest, it covers more than 4,000 hectares as we speak, and at one time, part of it was, there was a lot of deforestation. But since devolution came in, the county government has done quite a number of measures to ensure that we restore it back to its original state. First of all, we are fencing it. We are going to fence a total of 117 kilometers, which stretches from Shinyalu in Kakamega up to Kibiri in Vihiga. We did the first phase where we fenced 15 kilometers. Now we are doing the second phase where we are fencing 34 kilometers. And the county puts in 25 million every year. Then we are supported by Safaricom Foundation and Rhino Arc to be able to complete. And we've started seeing the results. We have a lot of biodiversity that had since disappeared. We've seen it has started coming up.
Right.
Yeah.
And people have now stopped.
And there is an organized way of
harvesting Mukombero and others. We'll talk about that shortly.
Yes, yeah.
Karibuni sana.
Thank
the
you
first
so
thing is the city is going to welcome you with the day's proverb. He goes to an African country every week and brings us 5 proverbs, one a day. Your job is to listen to the proverb, internalize it, and give us your interpretation. Not his, not from anyone, your own interpretation.
Okay.
City, where are we this week?
We're in DRC, the Democratic Republic of Congo. At one point or the other, it was called Leopoldville. This country has the distinction of having been owned by one individual, the King of Belgium at that particular time, and had the distinctive name of Leopold. That's why it was called Leopoldville. Right. Its name has changed. It has had wars. It has a population of 109 million. There could have been more. But there are 2 wars. They lost around 7 million people in total. Yes. Wars are not good things. The proverb: rain does not fear the authority of a king.
Rain does not fear the authority of a king. Governor, what's your interpretation of this proverb?
Yeah, thank you very much, and thank you for giving me a chance to appear and have this very, very important discussion, particularly on water. And rain does not fear the authority of a king. And from my own interpretation, when things are designed to happen, they will happen. Irrespective of who you are or your authority, because there are things that are designed by God which are beyond us. So sometimes we have to go with the current of the nature and the designs of God's. That is how I look at it.
When it's time, it's time.
It is time.
Okay. Waziri, what's your interpretation?
Yes. My opinion is that rain does not fear the authority of a king. It means nature will take its course, irrespective of what us as human beings or the capital investments we put wherever we've put. Nature will take its course no matter what. Yeah.
Okay.
Thank you.
Interesting, similar interpretation. Very good one. Let's start by first of all understanding the economic bloc, the Lake Region Economic Bloc, Governor.
Thank you very much. Lake Region Economic Bloc is made up of 14 counties, running all the way from Bomet, Kericho, extending to Kisumu. We have Nandi, we have Kisii, we have Nyamira. And in this block, we have approximately around 17 million people, which is a very huge population. And it has been the trend all over. We have counties coming together to have economic blocs so that they have viable investments. Each of these counties has its own competitive advantage over the rest. Like when you come to Bomet, we are a dairy county. We have a lot of tea. You go to Kisumu, probably in Homa Bay, you'll have a lot of fish and other resources that we can share within our block. So we have been doing a lot of investment and coming together, sharing ideas and experiences, and also speaking in one voice so that we can attract investments in our region and even financing of our infrastructure.
How is the economic bloc formed? Is it by law? Is it counties coming together and agreeing that maybe we should form a club?
We have a challenge. And that is why we have been agitating that we should institutionalize these economic blocs in law. So, as you have rightly put this, it's like more of a club because we don't have a legal framework to support it. But we have been having that discussion, and I want to believe that very soon we'll be able to have a legal framework that will support economic blocs. Yeah, not only in Lake Region Economic Bloc, but all the blocs that we have within the country.
You mentioned a challenge. What are these challenges?
I've mentioned the issue of the legal framework. You know, this is just an agreement, and it's not recognized in law, these economic blocs. But we have been agitating for that as counties, so that it is recognized. Even when it comes to the issue of funding the running of the activities of the bloc, it has been a challenge. And we have been having audit queries every year because of non-recognition in terms of its existence.
What are the benefits of having such a bloc?
I've mentioned one. Of course, when you talk about a population of 17 million,
yes,
and you approach a donor, for example, or a partner, development partner, you know, this institution, this partner will be able to listen to you compared to Bomet going it alone with a population of 1 million. You know, it doesn't make sense. Yeah.
Can I add something?
By all means.
Yeah, having these regional blocks, just to add on what the governor has said, we have shared resources, and especially like water is a cross-boundary issue. And there are likely to be disputes coming from it. For instance, if Kakamega, Busia and Bungoma are benefiting from the water that's coming from Nandi, and maybe Nandi feels they are not getting enough benefit from what comes of it, there is reason to sit together and have mutual agreements on how to protect the catchment. Because as much as the water is coming from Nandi and it's serving Kakamega, Kisumu, Sigei and all that, we'll need to have agreements on how do we then conserve and protect our water catchment areas. How do we get mutual benefit? And if we have developed infrastructures, Kakamega, how then do we incorporate the interests of Nandi County, Bomet County, and so on?
Aha. How many catchment areas do you have in this block?
Yeah, there are about 3. We have the Yala, we have Tindinho, then we have the Lake Basin. Yeah.
Extending all the way to the Mau, of course.
Yeah.
So, I mean, one of the things, we look at practicability of all of this. And if we look at these catchments, what uses are we seeing that they're fulfilling in these counties which now form this economic bloc? Who's using them and for what? Who's using these sources and what are they using them for? Whether it's on a, individual scale or whether it's, large economic activity.
I don't want to look at it like this belongs to so-and-so, because these are shared resources. And we need to be very careful on how we are using these resources. We must use it in a very sustainable way, which means even as we explore the resources that we have to have conservation in mind. And probably for us to develop economically, as we are describing ourselves as economic bloc, then we have to sit down and agree on how we are going to share these resources. As Waziri has indicated, if we are not very careful, it will be a source of conflict.
Okay.
Because even in our region, the quarrel that we have been having, of course, Bomet is and Kerija in the upper zone, where we have the sources of most of the rivers. So Bomet, Kerija, for example, are investing a lot of resources in conservation. But the people who are reaping out of our investment are the people downstream. So that's already a conflict. And that is why we need to come together and say, yes, Bomet, you are investing a lot of resources in terms of conserving the Mau forest and the catchment in the upstream. What do we do?
Okay, which is why I'm asking,
Yes.
what are they using these water sources for? Are we looking at just home use? Are we looking at agricultural activity? Are we looking at watering animals, construction? What are the main activities that take up this use?
Okay, they are, well, it cuts across all of them. We have domestic, we have agriculture, industrial use, source of energy. For example, we have hydro. So we normally say water is life.
Yes.
And for us to be able to have sustainable development, then it is something that we have to look at it seriously and find a way of managing that resource, because it cuts across. We can, we have Vision 2030, which recognizes water is a very important enabler for us to be able to achieve that vision. Yeah.
Thank you so much. And that is why we have the regional waterworks development agencies. For instance, we have Lake Victoria North Water Services Board that serves Kakamega, Kisumu, Busia, up to, it goes up to some regions of Uasin Gishu. And we have the Lake Victoria South, and then we have the Rift Valley Waterworks. So they extract this water for large-scale economic use.
Exactly.
Yes. So, and when they develop this infrastructure, they don't hand them over to the counties. But the water service providers, who are the water companies in their respective counties, are then allowed to make use of the water and supply to the residents. So in addition, the water, just as the governors told you, it's used also for irrigation purposes. It's used for dams, construction and all that. So it's very important. And that is why you'll find that in addition to what the governor said, that we just agree as counties and form a block, but you'll also realize most of these blocks have formed along those lines of the waterworks development agencies, the way they are set out in the National Water Act.
It's resource driven.
Yeah, it's resource driven.
Now, is there, because today we're talking about access and sustainability, is there a framework to ensure equitable access to this resource called water? That all the 14 counties have equitable access to their resource?
Thank you very much. I think as much as we are talking of LREB, Lake Region Economic Bloc, we don't want to look at ourselves in isolation. Of course, we have a national framework. We have the Water Act that is in place, and other policies and legal framework that has been put in place. So as much as we are talking of Lake Region Economic Bloc, we are also doing our planning in line with what we have put in place nationally. So there is a lot that we are doing, and probably that is why we have come together as 14 counties, so that we have a common understanding on some of these issues, so that even as we advocate for ourselves, we have one language in terms of what we need to do so that we have sustainable use of our natural resources for our economic benefit. Yes.
So is there a framework, even if it's through the national law, the Water Act, that ensures that everybody in the 17 counties is guaranteed equitable access? Because
yes.
Of course, there are some areas where you have the rivers and they're flowing, and so they have access to water. But then there are some areas downstream that may not have access to this water directly. The water boards are developing the infrastructure. The water service providers may not be at the same level in terms of being able to distribute the water to the end users.
Yes, I want to say that still, I want to say Kenya, of course, has this international, is signatory to some of the international commitments that we have. SDG 6, which calls for all of us to have access and availability of water and sanitation to everyone by 2030. Of course, that's still a challenge. And all of us have to align ourselves to that. And that is why, in our small way, we are working towards that. As a region, and part of the discussion that we are having is to have a legal framework. How do we contribute to that as an economic bloc? Of course, cascading to the individual counties and even areas within, because not all the 14 counties are the same. We have our own challenges as Bomet. Kakamega have their own challenges. Kisumu have their own challenges. And even in the 14 counties, we have a lot of disparities. There are some who are disadvantaged because with the advent of devolution, there are those of us who didn't have any water infrastructure. So we can be the same. There are others who are better off because of the investment that was done earlier on before the advent of devolution. So those are the disparities that we have. But we want to speak with what language? How do we bring up all these counties to a level that we can say everyone is comfortable? Because if, as Bomet, I don't avail water to my people, will we be able to realize this goal that we have set for ourselves? By the year 2030, everyone should be able to access water, should be able to access sanitation and so forth. That should be the discussion.
Thank you so much. I also want to add something, if you don't mind, on what the governor just explained. Ideally, all of us should benefit equally from this the infrastructure that's being developed by national government. And there is a National Water Master Plan 2030 that exists. And if you look critically at the strategic plans of these waterworks development agencies, they usually extract their priorities from this National Water Master Plan. And I was privileged to be part of the process where Lake Victoria North was developing their strategic plan for the next 5 years. Actually, they have put in projects that will benefit Kakamega, that will benefit Bungoma, that will benefit Trans Nzoia, and Busia as well. So I want to assume that ideally, the way it's planned on the national documents and in the strategic plan, each county needs to benefit. But you see, it also depends on the resources. For instance, they require about 34 billion to be able to do this. But supposing they don't raise the 34 billion, now it comes to push and shove. Who is more aggressive to get these projects?
Yes.
Who voted correctly? In Kenya, we understand this. So ideally, all of us should benefit based on the plans, the strategic plan, and the National Water Master Plan.
And the Constitution.
But because now of the and the Constitution, but because of the shortage of resources, you will find that some areas will move faster compared to the others.
Okay. And so the question then is whether the LREB is actually working at addressing this to make sure that you're focusing on bringing everybody on board, to bring everybody to par. Whether it's in your plans, it's in your investment in terms of your budget, it's in your investment in terms of getting support from development partners and so on. Okay. So we shall be taking a break shortly, and then we come back and continue this conversation. Governor, you know, of course, about CPF, right?
Yes.
All counties know CPF. Sindio, what is CPF, Governor?
County Pension Fund.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yes.
So it is very important because at some point we must retire. That's a fact. And I think as governors and as responsible leaders, we must prepare our people for retirement.
Yes.
And retirement, you don't wait until the last year to be able to do that. You must prepare from the first day that you are employed. Make small contribution for that rainy day when you'll not be able to work for yourself.
Our water conversation continues with Governor Hilary Barchok from Bomet and Peninah Mukabane, CECM for Water, Environment, Climate Change and Natural Resources from Kakamega County. And of course, we were talking about the access question, right? So you have some counties like yours, like you said, that are upstream, and this is where the water sources are. And you have counties that are downstream, and this is where people still want to extract water. But I'm sure you'll agree with me. It doesn't mean that because Bomet is upstream, that everybody in Bomet has easy access to water. And even the counties that are downstream, they also don't have easy access to water. What mechanisms have been put in place to ensure proper access?
Okay, thank you. As I've actually put it rightly, as much as I want to say Bomet, for example, which is upstream, is endowed with quite some huge resources when it comes to water, but not everybody is enjoying that resource. And the main reason, and I don't want to say that we are not putting in effort, but water infrastructure is very, very expensive. So getting piped water is still a challenge because we have competing priorities. And that is why we have been running around looking for partners to support. Like in Bomet, we have quite a number of partners who have come on board to support us in investing in the area of infrastructure for water. Like Red Cross, they have supported us, especially in Konoin, Sub-County, and Jebalungu, where they've injected their own resources. We have World Vision, which is working in Jebalungu area. They have also invested their resources. We are working also closely with the national government, and this is where the private and the public-private partnership is coming in to invest also in the area of water, because very expensive, and because of those competing priorities, we may not have resources either as national or as county governments to be able to do that. And we have also been sensitizing our people, particularly when it comes to water harvesting and storage. That's one other area that we can capitalize on, and we have not been doing very well in that. On a day we may have floods, tomorrow we have drought, and we need to speak to ourselves, talk to our people, and also invest in that particular area, especially harvesting water, storing for future use.
When we talk about sustainability, because then it's also very important, and some of the things that you have mentioned, why has it been so difficult to? I mean, I know that there's a drought, but is there an understanding across communities, across the users, across organizations, across government itself that's supposed to make sure that the sustainability factor comes into play, and how is that actually being done? I know that there's other parts where they say, okay, if you're in a place where it's producing charcoal, if you're going to burn a tree for charcoal, then you must plant 3 more, kind of thing. So what kind of sustainability efforts are taking place to ensure that 30 years down the line there will be as much water, if not more, available for this region to use?
Of course, there are a number. As much as we are talking of sustainability, we have to look at it in different ways. First of all, continuous investment in terms of infrastructure, which means we need to have a very strong mechanism of financing this infrastructure in a very sustainable way. It's unfortunate that as a country we are relying heavily on our development partners. In fact, more than half of the investment that we are making doing in the water sector is actually funded by our partners. So, which we need to run away from it because of the changing dynamics globally. Priorities are changing, so we have to find a way of maintaining ourselves. And that is why even programs that are running currently, we tend to look inside in terms of the interventions and the resilience that we need to build as a country. Of course, we have a challenge. Maybe going back to the Prof that we started with, we have the climate change. So even as we are planning that and doing that and talking of sustainable way of using resources, there are things that can be beyond us. And even as we are planning for that, we must plan, bearing in mind the challenges that we are having globally with the changes in climate and so forth. So we need to have a very holistic view of how we ensure that we have this resource today, tomorrow, and in future. So which I think one of the problems that we have been having is this integrated kind of planning where everybody is working in silos. And I think that is why we are reawakening ourselves. When you come to our region, we are now speaking as 14 counties. Because even when it comes to planning, yes, what activities have Kakamega planned as compared to their neighbors? Because I can put an industry next to a catchment area. Yeah. I'm doing conservation. But my neighbor is investing on totally different thing that will destroy the investment that I'm making. And that's why we're saying we need to have an holistic kind of planning and movement in terms of the direction that we want to take.
So, Governor, is there such a document? Is there a harmonized policy by the Lake Region Economic Bloc or harmonized strategy by the Lake Region Economic Bloc when it comes to conservation and extracting use of these resources?
Yes, I want to say that we are making strides towards that, and probably at some point we'll be mentioning our conference. And part of the reasons why we are having that conference from the 6th to the 7th is to harmonize ourselves and put up a legal framework that will support us in that direction. Yes.
Thank you. Maybe just to add on what the governor said, the water issues, access, water security and access to water, the insecurity arises from various factors. One is because of governance issues, right from the top up to the community levels, and also inadequate production. We may have the rivers, the lakes, but if you've not created an intake and a treatment plant, which requires a lot of infrastructure, as he said, then not everybody will get the water, especially in our rural areas. But the pace of urbanization is very fast, and counties are developing. Because of devolution, counties are opening up, and investors are coming down. So as counties, we have done quite a lot to ensure that our people access water. For example, in Kakamega, in the governor's campaign manifesto, he had this clarion call of Amati Kumliango, whereby Amati Kumliango means water at the doorstep. Water at the doorstep, and many partners have come in to support. Apart from the county putting in a budget of over 600 million every year, we have got USAID Western Kenya Water Project that have helped us to do last mile connectivity on 3 major projects, and in informal settlement within Kakamega town, there's a place called Juakali in Kakamega town and Mujini in Mumias, where they are doing a lot of metering and last mile connectivity to reduce non-revenue water as well. And then we have KABDA, which have developed many community projects, and they are also building the capacity of these communities to be able to effectively manage their water supplies. And where we have no service line completely, we also have 2 other partners, Western Water Project, where they are doing boreholes in every primary school in the central region of Kakamega. And we have Believers Revival Mission, who are also capturing the other part of Kakamega that's not covered. So what we need to do as the Lake Region Economic Bloc is to have a plan for the bloc. like a master plan for the block, so that even the investors who are coming in, they know the entry point, they know the areas that are underserved, and they know the specific interventions, because there are areas that are not close to a service line, not close to a river. What solution do you give in such a case? So we really need to invest also in alternative service delivery models, because if you rely on the water companies and maybe they have got their own issues of finances and all that, it becomes a problem. So as Kakamega, we are opening up to private operator models who will take up specific water schemes, offer professional management, do last mile connectivity, but still report the LREB indicators through the water companies, because we have two major companies. There is the rural and there is the urban. Yeah. So depending on the area you're operating, then as a private operator or as a delegated management, you will report all the indicators through the water company. So it's like the water company then licenses that are the private operator and operates according to the rules and regulations of LREB.
Do we still have to consult Egypt on how it is we go about using water?
Our water.
Yes.
Thank you very much. Natural resources, I think I want to say, can be something that is very tricky, bearing in mind that we share these resources. And when you look at it globally, especially when it comes to water, a number of water basins are shared by more than one country. And probably that is why even under the UN General Assembly, they have a general framework on how these resources should be shared. But that has not stopped the disputes that we have been having. For example, when you come to Kenya, our neighbors, Ethiopia, our neighbors, Uganda, Tanzania, going all the way to Egypt, we have been having issues. I remember 3 or 4 years ago, we wanted to abstract water along Mara River for irrigation. And it became a big issue with our neighbors in Tanzania, leave alone Egypt. So it's an issue that we need to have a discussion. Us and Tanzania, for example, we share Mau Basin, and we have been having partnership in terms of discussion. We have what we call Mara users. So every year we have a conference. Like this year, it was hosted last month, in the month of September, in Narok. Next year, we will be somewhere in Tanzania, just to have a discussion how we should use the shared resource. So as much as we have these treaties that we are subscribed to as a country, we have been having issues. So, and I think as long as we are still in this heart, we cannot run away from these conflicts, bearing in mind what I had earlier on mentioned, the volumes of water in our rivers is going down because of the climate change. So you can be very sure that the conflicts will be escalating. So every time we want to tap water and we want to irrigate more land, in fact, when you look at our development plans, we want to abstract more water for irrigation, as much as we are harvesting and storing, but the conflicts will escalate.
You know, the discussion around the Mara River with our neighbor Tanzania makes a lot of sense, and it's the way it should be. The treaties that were signed in 1929 and 1959 with regards to the Nile, the usage of water in Lake Victoria by the British government, it favored Egypt because the British had an interest in the Suez Canal Basin. Okay? Now, it affects Kenya, Uganda, Tanzania, Ethiopia,
South Sudan.
Exactly. Okay, so I am simply saying that even as we're having this discussion, because Egypt has always responded very aggressively when it comes to issues of the water, understandably, because the Nile is a really serious water source for them. But are there discussions that have been had that moves away from the clearly tilted agreement that the British essentially forced upon us, because we didn't really have a say in that agreement?
Yeah, but I agree. But now we need to renegotiate. But even as we are negotiating as at a disadvantaged position because already this thing has been entered into. They can refuse. But I think we need to have that common understanding, bearing in mind also the framework that is already in place through the UN General Assembly. Yeah.
So we've been seeing meetings organized by the Lake Region Economic Bloc, and you hinted at one, that you just be looking at resources around water. What's this about?
We have a conference in Kisumu, starting tomorrow, 6th to 7th. And the theme of the conference will be accelerating partnership and collaboration on water as a shared resource for sustainable service delivery. So, and I want to say that the fact that we have recognized water in the environment as an enabler in economic development, and we have it as our pillar, is a positive move in itself. So tomorrow and Thursday, we'll be having discussion. Of course, we'll also be having our partners, friends that we want to bring on board. One is we want to share experiences. Of course, we have mentioned that we have 14 counties, but at different levels of coverage in terms of water. We have almost, I think, 17 utilities. There are some who are doing well. There are some who are not performing very well. We'd also want to share and those experiences. What has Kakamega been able to do so that we have their water utility doing very well? Those are some of the experiences that we want to share so that we don't, as Bomet, I don't have to reinvent the wheel. Why don't I go and learn from Kakamega? And even as Council of Governors, we have a Marisha Center where we document best practices so that we can learn from each other as counties and improve. So the other thing that we'll be discussing is how we can internally resource to fund our infrastructure jointly. And then we will also be looking at our partners. What kind of proposals can we put in place so that we can sell to our development partners so that we can have funding, because we need to have a sustainable way of funding this infrastructure, which I've mentioned is very expensive. So that is part of the discussion. And then, of course, more importantly, what kind of legal framework can we put in place so that it can support what we are doing and institutionalize some of those decisions so that one, I exceed, because I'm serving my second term. Somebody else will be coming in 2027. How can we ensure continuity of the interventions and the plans that we have put in place? I think that will be part of the discussion, because I think we've been having a challenge as a country and as counties. Every administration comes with its own decisions and ideas. By the time you settle another administration, it is swept and we start afresh. So that is what we want to avoid, so that we also use the resources that we have prudently and in a way that will be beneficial to the Mwananchi, bearing in mind that we already have a commitment under our Constitution 2010 that will be supplying water to all of us.
Yeah, and because the conference also will be bringing on board various stakeholders and players in the water sector and partners, we expect that we will be able to attract more investments in terms of water infrastructure, particularly last mile connectivity, and then, of course, bring on board other innovations and technology to ensure sustainable supply of this resource. And as a block, then we can have discussions on how to conserve and protect our catchment areas using a transboundary approach.
Okay. Yeah. Asanteni sana for this conversation today, and wish you the best in your conference. But also, let's keep talking about what is it that we can do to create more awareness, but at the same time, make sure that everybody has their constitutionally guaranteed right to access to water, sanitation, and others. Professor Hilary Barchok is the governor from Bomet County and chair of the water pillar at the Lake Region Economic Bloc. And Peninah Mukabane is the CECM, the County Executive Committee member for Water, Environment, Climate Change, and Natural Resources from Kakamega County.
This is the Situation Room, the only way to start your day.